At the Democratic Convention in 1968, 8 anti-war activists were charged because of their violent demonstrations. The defendants were David Dellinger, Rennie Davis, Thomas Hayden, Abbie Hoffman, Jerry Rubin, Bobby Seale, Lee Weiner, and John Froines. Rennie Davis and Thomas Hayden were members of the Students for a Democratic Society. Likewise, Bobby Seale was a member of the Black Panther Party, and Jerry Rubin and Abbie Hoffman were the founders of the Youth International Party, otherwise known as Yippies. The group was charged with intent to induce a riot. The attorneys used this trial as a platform to attack Nixon, racism, and the Vietnam War. In the end, Judge Hoffman claimed that the attorneys and the defendants were guilty of 175 counts of contempt of court. The jury found all but Weiner and Froines guilty with the intent to riot. The other 5 were sentenced to 5 years and $5,000 fines, but the contempt charges were dropped and convictions were overturned. The Yippies were a counterculture group that actively protested the war. The group was officially founded by Abbie Hoffman and Jerry Rubin, who also happened to be part of the famous Chicago 8. The Yippies were famous for using stunt-based protests. This way of protesting pulled out media attention and attracted press coverage. On the other hand, many people believed that they were practicing large-scale disobedience instead of peaceful protests. During the 1968 Democratic Convention, the Yippies enacted the carnivalesque Festival of Life in Lincoln Park, where they nominated a pig that happened to be named Pegasus as their presidential nominee. Police broke up this event, which sparked violence and led to the arrest of the famous Chicago 8. The Yippies continued to live on and now even have a museum in New York City. The Anti-Riot Act was passed in 1968 as a response to the protest against the Vietnam War between 1964 and 1967. Some people refer to this law as the Wrap-Brown Law. The law states that any foreign commerce or facility of interstate used with the intent to promote, organize, encourage, participate, or aid in someone's participation of a riot is unlawful. This act was most famously used to prosecute the famous Chicago 8 on February 18, 1970, but their conviction was later appealed. Music in the Vietnam War. When our soldiers found themselves in the middle of a jungle, missing home and their families, music was one of the only tastes of home they had. Our soldiers formed friendship and shared love for their country through music. While some listened to the Armed Forces radio, others cassette tapes from home, songs like I Got You by James Brown, Ring of Fire by Johnny Cash, and These Boots by Nancy Sinatra were just a few that troops would listen to, inspiring them to keep on going, helping them remember that there will be a day that they get to step onto American soil again. Music was so empowering during the war era that some artists even went to Vietnam, entering the soldiers, reminding them that they haven't been forgotten. As you can see in the pictures, soldiers hovered around the radio, probably listening to someone that makes them feel closer to home, while another soldier plays guitar in his off time. Music has always been a way for people to connect since the beginning of time. On top left, Nancy Sinatra is shown performing for the soldiers in Nam, a dangerous trek for a concert, but wow, what a way to show your patriotism. In 1968, there was a convention held in Chicago to nominate a person into the race for president, since LBJ had announced already he would not serve another term as president. I wonder why. Also that weekend in Chicago was the conveniently planned youth festival put on by the National Mobilization Committee to end the war in Vietnam, and the Youth International Party, aka Yippies. They were rallying for peace, for their voices to be heard by our next potential president. Many protesters, peaceful or not, were thinking this was their last chance to make a stand against the war. Little to their knowledge, they would also be met by almost 3 times as many police. Why so much force, you ask? The mayor of Chicago, Mayor Daley, who was present at the convention, had gotten word prior to it that there were plots to kill a lot of important government officials that day, including himself. One specific protest stood out that day. The Yippies were to have an election of their own that day. That's right. They were going to appoint one of their own to lead our brave country. But who? Pegasus? Not a human, but an actual pig? After that, the protests became heated. Tear gas was thrown and 8 were arrested, including Pegasus. This created a huge ordeal for the media and brought a lot of attention to the Yippies, which is exactly what they wanted, to be heard. Throughout these 6 days of the convention and protest rallies, it was stated that at least 500 people were treated in our local area hospitals for things like injuries from riots to treatment for tear gas.